Are you, as a leader, building a culture of growth? Because here's what I mean. There is a huge difference between, hey, when should we see results in that marketing campaign versus when are we going to see results in that marketing campaign? Which one do you think is going to work to grow your revenue? Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Marketing Blender. I'm Dacia, and with me is a special guest host, Crystal Jones.
Hey.
One of our amazing, charismatic, brilliant chief marketing officers. And I am so excited because today we're actually going to tap into one of Crystal's secret powers. And it's about building trust between a CEO and a CMO. Now, it doesn't really matter if we're talking fractional or if we're talking what it takes to build a profoundly impactful leadership team. But Crystal has some amazing stories on this. You've helped guide couple billion-dollar valuations from almost zero, in addition to working with very small companies. I mean, you have really run the spectrum. So you've been in front of boards, solopreneurs, teams, coaches, investors.
Yeah.
So you know a lot about team building and what happens in leadership if there's not trust.
Yeah.
I'm so excited to dive in.
I'm happy to be here.
Okay, so one of the big things I want to start out with is, why do we even have to talk about trust between a CEO and a CMO? Now, you would think, oh, naturally a CEO is going to have a lot of trust in the person that's stewarding the growth, but we don't always find that. So talk to me about why this is a problem.
I think it's a problem because how important marketing is to the organization overall and how that's undervalued. And the reason it's undervalued is so many times we're considered a cost center or just an errand group for the rest of the organization.
Yes.
And we forget to talk in the language of business to the CFO, to the CEO, to the boards. We think activities mean value when they're just activities.
Yes.
And people see through that right away. And I think generally there is a discomfort. You know what they say, like every 18 months, new CMO comes in or out.
Yeah.
I think that's always in the back of our heads.
Agreed. Okay, so I love how you're talking about the language of business. Okay, what do you mean by that? Because this is like a soapbox I want to go stand and jump off of and shout from the rooftops. But I think this is a really big point you're making.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think we have to. I'm gonna hurt a lot of marketers' feelings out there, but impressions, things like that, people don't care. You can go out and buy a lot of leads.
Yep.
The language of the business is tying marketing to the true business outcomes.
Yeah.
Whether it's revenue and pipeline, there's been a long time where marketers are I don't want to be touched to any of that, but you have to be tied to that to show value and to actually work back to the seat at the table or have that conversation with the board. So, a lot of the exercises that we go through together with our clients is about tying revenue goals to what the marketing plan looks like. So it's a top-down revenue goals, what percentage is marketing, going to support, and then what is the plan from there. So not only are you justifying your budget, but now you have something to tie your OKRs to, the rest of the team. And when you go talk to the board or the rest of the executive team, you're talking in that language. You're not just showing here we redesigned the website and then here are the metrics. It's we got $3 million in pipeline from this effort. I think that helps a lot.
I completely agree. You bring up the website, and so frequently an agency or a marketer will immediately be we need to fix or change or improve the website. And I always wonder, is that marketers just trying to put their stamp on things? Because occasionally, and you've got a client like this right now, where updating the website is about stewarding their reputation in the world and what they stand for and making sure that it caught up with what they've accomplished. That is one small specific example where the website has its own value. But the other 99 out of 100 scenarios are, so what? So what does it have to do with revenue? So what does this mean to our growth? So what does this mean to our most profitable service offerings or anything else? And I think it's such a huge point that so many people marketers will lean into where they're comfortable or where they're excited versus really hold the space for, what is this supposed to accomplish for the organization?
Yeah, 100%. I have so many things to say about this. And I think it's part of not communicating where the website sits in the ecosystem of your business and why it's so important. I think that's a big part of it. But I think it also ties to the lack of trust with marketing, where things like messaging and brand and web all feel like these fluffy, feel-good things that a marketing person wants to do to make them, the rest of the organization says, oh, well, that's just what new marketers do when they come in. They just want to change our logo around or colors or change some words.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate that's the reputation that has, because when it comes to the website, there's so much value in having a really good presence out there, the right content that speaks to the right people. If something is weird with that, your website just doesn't convert or work the way that you want it to. It's hard,
But I think back to the language of business, there are specific metrics that if a marketer calms down, they can think, okay, this is buyer behavior. These are literally insights about the humans that will make or break our success. Now, what does that tell us about our business and about how we serve them and about how we're going to close the deal and, and where that revenue stream is going to come from and how we drive value. And if it was in the context of delivery and revenue, then all of a sudden people are like, oh, okay, I know where that is in the journey. But you're right, not clarifying what problem you're solving or what point of impact you're making is huge.
Yeah, not at all. It does seem fluffy, but what a lot of people don't understand is how much research folks are doing before they even get to a conversion point.
Yeah.
And if you don't have case studies out there, good customer stories, or if your customers don't feel like they see themselves in you, or something's off and they can't trust you, then it's all lost opportunity.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm going to kind of make a weird leap here. I hope it makes sense out loud, but
we'll find out.
But yeah, exactly. But it's interesting because when you think about the role of marketing, like we are thinking about the hearts and minds of people and how to influence them and how to serve them, like how to help them realize, oh, I have a problem or a need, and what we offer aligns with that. So we're great at communication and at influence, right? Like that's the science that we work in. But then when you think internal communication with a CEO, with a board, with the rest of the leadership team, with a CFO, all of a sudden the thinking around the heart and the mind of the person you're trying to influence, straight out the door.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's amazing, I keep going back to this because I love the phrase, the language of business. What do they care about? Okay, they have numbers to hit. They have a business that has to be sustainable and protected in order to protect jobs or enter a new market or mitigate risk. Speak that.
Yeah.
Speak that, because you are doing work that impacts that. But then we stay in like the language that's just down here in the weeds that really doesn't serve anyone and doesn't create understanding. And so it's weird because we should be so good at understanding how to talk to people about what they care about. And then we're not, when it comes to internal communication for some reason.
I think there's a vulnerability with that because you're going to have the tough conversations.
Yeah.
You're going to have a tough conversation regardless of when you have it. It's either going to be when your CEO and CFO are like, we're cutting your budget in your team and like, we're going to manage you out. Or you need to have like the conversation early and say, these are the changes that we have to make to get the business where we need to be. And this is why. And just have the conversation. I think we get in our heads and we get scared. And it's easier to just stick with those things that we're comfortable with versus actually taking the leap to do that. Because I've had that with my CEOs. Man, very, very, very hard conversations where I've left the meeting and, had to like take a few breaths. And watch some crappy TV and unwind a little bit.
100%. No, I agree, because when you stand in the space where you are going to tell the truth, even if people are not going to be happy with what that is, it's incredibly powerful for the future of the organization. But it's a big lift.
Yeah.
It's a big lift to be brave like that.
Well, and I think with all my experience, I've made the decision that it's better to die in that truth and to my values than to like whimper out slowly. I've done both. First way was way, way better.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and it's interesting because I have found being a fractional CMO gives a little bit additional freedom because there is ruthless clarity that we have to drive outcomes and that we have to be at the C-level, period.
Yeah.
And so that means we tell the truth early and often, because who else is going to? Like, that's why we got hired for that. Otherwise, if you can't, you get fired, right? And so it does no one any service by not naming the things that are uncomfortable or not naming the things that are hard or dangerous for an organization. Because if it stands in our ability, in the way of our ability to really drive exciting growth for this company and help them achieve their dreams and their goals, we get fired. And so, like, there's kind of this built-in boldness.
Yeah.
Because you have to bring it all to the table or you can't drive results. And I think sometimes, depending on the size of the organization, of course, there's room to hide. But man, I mean, marketers not happy when they're not speaking the truth. The C-level, they can sense it, even though they don't really know what marketing's supposed to be doing for the organization. It's just a horrible place to be.
You can't hide too long. CFO will find you.
That's so true. Yeah.
They're ruthless.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. So what are some of the ways that you've built that trust with the leadership team? You know, I mean, you started talking about, well, you will deliver the hard truths.
Yeah.
You know, what are some other things that you do that really build trust at a C-level?
I talk to everybody.
Okay.
I'm not a shy person, but I'll go out, I'll talk to product, talk to sales, have hard conversations with the sales leadership because they're in their own world of pain. You know, you just have to be curious and learn what's actually going on with the organization. Because when you think about how marketing should function, in my mind anyway, is that it is the heart of a company because we get to look at everything.
Yes.
We're not laser focused in one area, but we're looking at culture. We're looking at, you know, helping HR. We're looking at helping product to make sure the features and benefits are out there, that we're, you know, kind of sometimes in that conversation, we're the voice of reason saying, don't go over your skis on that.
Exactly. We don't need that feature now. The market's not asking for it. Yes.
And you even brought up like risk management. There's a huge amount of like, now it's about managing risk and how you do that. I think putting marketing in that conversation is wildly important, but you have to put yourself in opportunities to have that conversation. People aren't going to come find you unless there's a problem and it's a little bit too late. So you got to be curious, ask questions, and, you know, I don't know, I always had fun with it, have fun. Like, you know, it's, you know.
We're doing life together at work. You know, maybe we should stop pretending like we're not.
Exactly.
And you've got amazing long-term relationships with people
I've
across.
been lucky.
I would argue that you are not lucky, but that you've done that on purpose. And it's really beautiful because the network that you've built where you still bring value, even though you don't work for the same organization anymore, is just remarkable. It's the coolest
Thank you for that. I love my people.
Yeah.
Like anybody can reach out to me anytime. I'll do my best to help you out. And, you know, and it's been, the love I get back from that has been amazing. Whenever I started out being a fractional and I started talking to people in my network, the amount of support I got was just fantastic.
Yeah.
So yeah, it makes me emotional thinking about it because, you know, even my first like true like marketing like mentor, we had like 2-hour conversation a few months ago. And I still talk to a CEO that actually hired me twice, you know. I'm always bothering him about this, that, and the other thing. And he asked me to talk to his son at one point about, you know, he was switching into technology, had that conversation. I was like, I don't think you want me to have that conversation. I mean, who wants my advice? I can't tell you if I'm taking you down a bad path or not. You know?
Oh my God, I love it. Oh, and one of the things I did not mention to you guys about Crystal is she was a multi-time client.
Oh, yeah.
Before I begged her eventually, once she was ready, to come over as one of our CMOs. But it's been just such a gratifying relationship.
Oh, yeah.
You know, where we were able to work with you to deliver value. And then it came full circle that once you were making a career change, I was like, hey.
Well, and the funny thing is you were with me in some of the most challenging work environments I had ever been in.
Yeah.
And it was very hard for me at the time to see through it or navigate it. But having your support through that was actually really, really helpful. And it happened to happen again. And then you helped me through another tough situation. So.
You know, but it's a really great point. So for any marketers that are in startup environments, or especially technology startup environments, the risk reward, you know, is dangerous because there are so many that don't go the distance, and it's really tough. And it's even more important that you're a clear voice of reason with a very clear point about advocacy and revenue growth because you can't afford not to be. I mean, it's putting everyone in danger if not.
Yeah. And, the startup that I was at a few years ago, it was challenging because I didn't know when to quit because I'd always been not going to quit. But I think that's another key point is like as a marketer or whenever, especially you're in like these startup situations, there does get a point where the culture doesn't serve you anymore. And that was like the hardest thing for me to accept was because I kept thinking if I did something differently or pushed at it a different way that I could make it work.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't coming together. And then finally, I did make a move and I figured it all out and got out of there. But it was hard. It's hard sometimes to accept that it's just not the right culture for you.
Yeah.
And you really got to look at like there's so many dynamics between the board and the executive team. Sometimes you don't even have a board to deal with.
Yep.
That can be just as challenging as having a board because there's no checks on a CEO to make sure that they're not going off the rails a little bit. So that can also be challenging.
I completely agree. If you have a healthy board, what they care about is incredibly predictable.
Yes.
They care about numbers.
Yes.
They care about risk, and they care about the foundational, what about tomorrow? What about 3 years in the future and the rationale behind it?
Yeah.
You're right, especially if you have a visionary entrepreneur founder, no checks and balances around that. And sometimes that can be wildly effective and sometimes it can really be their own unraveling. And it just depends on whether they'll listen or not.
Yeah. And that's what's so funny about like those super visionary founders. Either it goes beautifully and they're very successful, or because they don't want to give up that control, they never go after the proper round of funding that they need to actually make the business work. And they think they're doing a service to nickel and dime, and they end up shooting themselves in the foot in the long run.
Yeah.
Because they didn't want to give up that control to an additional, board member or, other folks. So, it just depends.
Exactly. At the Marketing Blender, we have fractional CMOs and outsourced marketing teams to drive your success. The two most common problems that we are approached about is how do we break revenue plateaus and accelerate success, or how do we attribute marketing to revenue impact? And the answer is that we build a system, because your marketing should be driving revenue, it should be driving your reputation, and it should be driving resilience. If you want to learn more, check out themarketingblender.com. We've talked a little bit about what a CMO can do to build a great relationship with a CEO. What about the opposite? What is a CEO doing right to really build a great relationship with their CMO and to really basically, like, I like to think about it as they're building a culture of growth, not just a growth plan.
Yeah.
What does it look like when they're doing something right to really set a CMO up for success?
Yeah, I can talk about this company I'm working with right now. I had to have a very, very hard conversation with them that I was absolutely dreading because it was a big change. And the CEO has been incredibly supportive. And it is a big change. So we know we can't make change immediately.
Yes.
So he's listened and now just trying to make sure that the decisions, the micro decisions that happen out of the big decisions are sound.
Yeah.
And that we don't take too big of a swing and then kind of go off the rails. But he has been incredibly supportive, listening, bringing people together. I think that's it. Like, is that empathy and that being able to listen and trust your people is a big one.
Oh, good call.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then another CEO that I've worked for multiple times, he, we would have the really hard conversations. One time he looked at me, he's like, Crystal, you just can't take the word no for an answer. I was like, no, I can't, because this is not a bad decision.
I can't watch this. I'm sorry.
I can't watch it. If you're going to make this decision, I'm going to make sure you know how I feel about it. And then when it goes sideways, I'm going to be like, well,
you'll know to listen to me next time.
I mean, not like, in front of people, maybe a little bit on the side. But he was the same way. Like, we could have those conversations and work through things together.
Yeah.
So instead of just telling the marketing person this is what they need to do, I guess in both those situations, I would say it's a conversation.
Yeah.
Now, there were situations where he's like, no, I need this, and I need this in this amount of time. But then me in return saying, okay, I can get that to you in this amount of time, but here are the risks that we're taking. And this is where I have to cut corners, or I can't get the full
Exactly.
benefit from this.
Well, and you're still bringing the truth, even though you're saying, okay, I'll figure it out, but we're going to go into this in full awareness and transparency on what it's going to take to accomplish that.
Yeah.
I love that. You know, it's interesting for me, you know, as I'm listening to these stories, like, of course, it's pulling up so many of my own. But the thing that I think strikes me the most is there's an attitude of listening with the real intention to understand on both sides.
Yeah.
And, you know, the intention to ask proper questions. But, you know, you even said that, like, it's a conversation, but it's an open conversation where you trust that both of you have the same goals, aligned philosophies, you know, or values at least. And, you know, and so, you know, I was explaining to a CEO the other day who was confiding in me that he was having a really difficult time with his in-house marketing lead. And I finally said, okay, can I share something that might be difficult to hear? He was like, fine. I go, there's a very big difference between, so when will we see results versus when are we going to see results?
Yeah, that's a huge difference. Yeah.
But, you know, that's why I like to think about it as a culture of growth and a culture of success, because a marketer is completely capable in this day and age of answering when will we see results.
Yeah.
If they understand pipeline management and they understand the sales cycle, and they've talked to people outside of marketing, then they can say, well, here's the basic math of campaign launches. This is how long our sales cycles on average is this. We'll see revenue impact at blah, blah, blah. But instead, a lot of times it's just this withering and like it's a self-protection posture where everyone's so scared to answer or ask that question, or it's so hostile that no one's actually seeking a real answer, but it's a little bit like a veiled threat. And I would argue that occasionally marketers believe that threat is real, and the CEO did not intend that, where they were asking
They're just frustrated
in a healthy way, but that marketer's been burned or overwhelmed, or they're scared and they haven't learned that marketing maturity, you know, to go ahead and like be okay with the honest answers.
Oh yeah, it takes a while to get there. I wasn't always like the truth bomb marketer.
Took me a while. Yep, same. I know.
It takes a long time to get there and to be living in what you believe. So everyone listening, just be patient with themselves on trying to figure out where they are in that journey. But I mean, I've had a CEO that wouldn't listen at all. And I used to joke with the head engineering, be like, I said, I'm choking on like not being able to tell him what is happening, but he didn't want to hear it at all. There was no opening for like any sort of conversation. I ended up with an ulcer. I was like, nope, I'm just going to say it now. It's not worth it.
That's so horrible. Exactly. Not worth it. When you're saying this company's literally killing me, it was.
Yeah, I didn't even know till, you know, like right towards the end.
My gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah. But also, I mean, think about how much care, you know, I mean, like you were so invested that the stress and the ownership was literally eating you up physically because you did care, even if it wasn't, you know, going well.
Yeah. Well, it's more than just us and the CEO. It's everybody else. It's everyone sitting next to you shoulder to shoulder at the executive table that you want to be protective of and help out. It's a team. And then it's the people, when you think about building a team or training people, that you want to see succeed.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, so I take that part of the job in a lot of ways just as seriously, if not more, as the revenue part of it, because at the end of the day, it's always going to be about people. I think we forget that sometimes.
I completely agree. Like, we don't ignore outcomes, but they're a reflection of people's decisions.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I love it. Love it.
Yeah.
One final thing before we wrap. Now, when we were prepping for this, like off camera, you had told me about a crazy piece of data you came around about board membership.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember, 10, 15 years ago when I started being invited to boards, they were always clamoring to have a marketer on the board. But you told me that's not true anymore.
Yeah, well, I did a Women in Boards program with University of Pennsylvania through Wharton, and they were going through the numbers of, you know, who they pull board, you know, members from, and marketing was incredibly low. Strategy was high, but marketing was low. So,
and can we talk about the fact that people are not perceiving marketing as strategic? Oh, and for the record, there are a lot of tactical marketers that stay comfortable in what they know.
Yeah.
It's tactics first, or they haven't learned to be strategic, or who knows the reasons why. So But that's so sad because that's the perception now that needs to be overcome. And it's the year 2025. Marketing wins.
Yeah.
Period. People don't answer their phones anymore. Thank you, spammers.
Yeah.
And scammers.
They don't check their email anymore.
No, exactly. I mean, holy cow.
Yeah.
So, but marketing and the science and art of influence wins, but you have to do it well. And that means it has to be strategic.
Yeah. I mean, in my mind, when I saw that, I was like, okay, yeah, marketing and strategy are very similar, but I don't think that's exactly how people see it anymore,
Yeah.
which is unfortunate, where I think that marketing actually has to be more strategic now because the communication channels aren't working. It's actually harder now
Yes.
than it has ever been. I think people are really missing that like human touch. Like anyone can go out and figure out how to prompt AI. Anyone can go out and, write a bunch of emails and send them and figure that out. But not everybody can figure out that human connection that's actually going to make things work.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I would say, like, if you are a tactician marketer, like, that's fine. I loved being in, like, and I still do to a certain extent, like, in the tactics, trying to navigate something and figure it out.
It's fun.
Yeah, it is. And that move to strategy was very scary. Like, it was very stressful. And it didn't happen where I was like, hey, I'm going to become strategic.
Right.
It happened over a period of time where I had to become that way to, work in the situations I found myself in.
Yeah.
So,
well, and it comes from questions like, why isn't this working? Or why did it stop working? Or how do we enter that market? And you start just the basic planning and you think, wait, all my playbooks won't, that's not going to fly here.
No.
And so I think it is, like those baby steps of like, oh, how do I get through this? And eventually,
Yeah.
Those experiences start developing a point of view and a philosophy, that takes you up the strategy ladder, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And you have to find your sounding boards. I have people that I call, text, you were always one of them, to figure out what exactly is going on.
Yeah, totally.
And that's why I love my people and my network and all the people I know, because I know I can pick up the phone or text, usually text, I'm a millennial, but and just see if they can give me a good perspective on what's happening. Because someone out there is seeing what you're seeing.
Exactly.
You're not alone.
No, you're not alone. And somebody can give you like just that slight little nudge that changes the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, and refocuses. So one final question before we wrap up. Now, you mentioned the phrase cost center earlier in our conversation. And yeah, I've had that one thrown,
Oh, yeah.
At me, both, owning the company and even prior to that about, marketing cost center and just perceiving it that way, whether they said it or not. How should a C-suite, what kind of appropriate expectations should there be so that that point of view around a cost center is not dangerously sucking away all of your opportunities and fun and joy and branding?
You don't have the CRO like circling your like budget like a vulture waiting to like swoop in
and steal it. Yep.
Steal it or try to take marketing for themselves. Yeah, I think one is marketing in my mind is a growth driver. And look, there are going to be things as a marketer you're going to have to do where you're not going to be able to tie revenue to that. I think we're always scared to say that. Like there's still going to be those things where you just have to look at the picture overall and say, this is how this supports these other things that are going to drive revenue. I think we've always been scared to say that because of the cost center conversation. So really what happens with that comment or that feeling is that it cuts the conversation before it could even start. But
agreed.
I think it's all about looking at overall growth.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, it is because, we use the phrase frequently ecosystem. And if there is something unhealthy in your ecosystem that's creating friction for potential buyers or scaring them or tarnishing your reputation, then reputation management or top of the funnel or brand, it's not a one for one. It's not, I spent this $1 and it's exactly responsible for this $1 of revenue. However, if it's gone,
yes,
you can start seeing it in the numbers.
Yeah.
Where it's deteriorating or you're hitting a plateau or, that type of thing. So yeah, I do agree. And being able, back to the top of the conversation, where you were explaining, being able to explain, like, let me show you what healthy looks like. Let me paint and vision cast what an amazing system needs to happen. And now let's start talking about how to track the right things.
I like how you had said system because I think we also underestimate operations a lot.
Yeah.
You need to have like an operational foundation
Yes.
to make the rest of it work.
Yes.
And
exactly.
So, I mean, I remember I always make this joke, like, like Chevy Chase in, like, I think it's an SNL skit back in the 70s or whatever. He said, my understanding there would be no math. When I got into marketing, I was like, sweet. I don't have to math. I'm bad at it. Marketing's all about math. It's all about the numbers.
Surprise! Can't comfortable with numbers for the rest of your career. Yeah, you are not kidding. Exactly. And but one other thing is off camera, you and I were talking about, we both do speaking and like mentoring, in marketing groups and, individual marketers. And there's so much bitterness inside of the marketing role. And it is so dangerous. Like, I really want to say to marketers coming up in their career, whether they're only 2 years in or 12 years in, no, like, be careful of that negativity because it will eat you alive.
Yeah.
And it is preventing the lessons that lay on the other side.
Yeah.
If you're having hard questions or dangerous environments, oh God, that might be the life lesson you needed that changes the game for everybody you serve in the future and for yourself.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you want to speak to that because I know you've seen it too.
I have. And it breaks my heart because it doesn't always have to be, it doesn't have to be that way at all. But I came out of it through a few very, very hard learning experiences and situations, but it actually reinforced my sense of humor.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you just have to kind of laugh at how absurd some of the situations marketers find ourselves in. We find ourselves in some crazy, absurd conversations,
environments you can't control. Yeah.
And so, it's just kind of see if you can take it with a little grain of salt and a bit of humor.
Yeah.
I know it's hard because it's, it's your livelihood and it's, your paycheck and there's all kinds of stuff wrapped up in it, taking care of your family and things like that. But at the end of the day, it helps if you can just kind of laugh at yourself and kind of laugh and find humor in the absurdity of it.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll go to, like, this morning I was in an Uber and I was on my way to the airport. I was kind of nervous about coming and, I was thinking about I was in my head about all the things like I have going on simultaneously to coming to see you.
Yeah.
And the Uber driver, she was so sweet. She said, what are you doing? Where are you going? I said, I'm going to like Fort Worth, Dallas area. And, I said, I'm traveling for work. And she says, man, I wish I could travel for work. That would be amazing. I could go see all these interesting people and go to interesting places. And I was sitting there and I was thinking, oh shit, I'm lucky. I'm lucky I get to do this.
Yeah.
Yeah. And previous jobs, I've traveled a lot. I love to travel, but it lost its somewhere along the way, it lost its shimmer. I see it in the airport too when you're standing at your gate and you look at everybody and you're like, wow, this is rough. But it was just that little conversation with the Uber driver that made me realize, well, get to do that.
Yeah, exactly. I love it. I love it. Well, you guys, I hope you enjoyed this. And just remember, there is a truth behind the scenario you're dealing with, the truth of the human hearts and the minds, the complexities of wanting to grow and wanting to succeed and being scared that it won't work. And that's really what's at the heart of this amazing relationship that can develop between the C-suite, but specifically between the CEO and the CMO. And it's worth it to actually acknowledge each other's humanity and then walk through it together. Because as a marketer, you're helping people achieve their dreams. So thank you so much. I hope you guys enjoyed this. We would love to hear from you, from your experiences or any of your questions. You can find Crystal on our website or on LinkedIn. You'll see her link in the bio below. And thanks, guys, so much. Make sure you hit subscribe. Definitely hit that like button. And we'll see you next week. Onward and upward.